Excluding ASL from deaf children is a bad idea. Hello, I have a story that can explain why excluding sign language from deaf children is a really bad idea. Deaf studies and education is very important. It's important to confront the oral education that kids have and the thought that cochlear implants and hearing aids are really good. All of these different studies that were just listed on the screen all agree and say and prove that to raise oralism as the number one focus for deaf children is a weak way to go about teaching them. There's a book called Deaf Studies and Education that is a very good resource for this topic. The question is, would you prefer to have your deaf kids speaking or knowing language? The challenge is that you don't go with the status quo using a cochlear implant and not allowing kids to use sign language. It might be better to incorporate both the use of a cochlear implant and also sign language. The truth is, all deaf children need to use sign language because all of their hearing levels are different. They vary so drastically. It's important for culture and environment of the deaf population to keep sign language in circulation. What happens is most of the time the medical industry wants to get the cochlear implant or the hearing aids on a child right away, and they need to stop. It's better if it's suggested to the deaf community to use these things, but not forced on them. Society looks at deaf people and they want to make decisions for them, but it's important to let them decide for themselves. There was a discussion about this topic, and there's some wording in different laws that's important. What happens is at birth, children need to start seeing sign language. Deaf children need to start seeing sign language. That's very important for their language development. They need the exposure of sign language. And if you put a cochlear implant on them and then you don't sign to them, their development is very delayed. It causes their development to be challenged and their mental development not to progress like it should. Different studies show that language is a big challenge for not only the group of kids with cochlear implants, but also the ones that sign. It's a challenge for the kids with cochlear implants to know if they should sign or if they should try to speak. Because English is not their natural language, sign language comes so much easier for them. But do you want them to think that signing is a negative thing and has negative connotations in society? Do you want to introduce barriers for their learning? It's important to provide expert opinions rather than all of these different opinions that can be misunderstood so easily. It's not that sign language harms a student or a child, quite the opposite, actually. It's a large benefit to them and to their development. Most of the time, the problems that develop are language related. There is a woman whose name was just on the screen who did some research and found that it was very difficult for students to learn English, for deaf kids to learn English, if the parents were 100% hearing and didn't sign at all. The communication was just a constant struggle. Natural communication between the members of the family just did not happen. When that child was introduced to the strong ASL community near them, it felt natural and the signing just started to flow. Remember that 95% of hearing families, deaf children are born to hearing families. It's hard because in schools, it's mostly hearing people that are signing. And it's just a very difficult situation for students because it's not always very easily understood. Language is not taught. And so that is very difficult for the development of deaf children. Most of the time, sign language is called manually coded English. And so rather than actual sign language, ASL, it's the English word order, and it's very hard to understand. It requires more processing. And the kids think, if that's ASL, that is really difficult. But it's important for deaf children to be able to be exposed to and learn natural sign language. I want you to know that there's a lot of articles and studies that have been printed on this topic. And on the topic of bilingual incorporation. It's important when students are learning many different languages. There's a lot of research on the expansion of a lot of extended research on how you can incorporate many different languages for one person's learning ability. That research is happening at Gallaudet. I hope that in the future, deaf education can change and can incorporate more than one language. Because right now it feels like it's limited to using cochlear implants and hearing aids, and that's all the opportunities they have. But it's important to examine the benefits and the growth opportunities for students who can learn multiple languages, even the parents themselves, the hearing parents, to incorporate sign language for their deaf child. It's important for that child to be able to express themselves in sign, even in writing, and just in their education for the wholeness of the person, for each child.